evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's side event. The title of this side event is The Role of Forestry as a Nature-Based Solution to Address Climate Change. I'm Boo-Hyun Cho, a research assistant of Center for Global Climate and Marine Governance, affiliated with Global Research Institute of Korea University. So let's begin opening session. First, for the welcoming remarks, I'd like to invite Jong-woo Park, the Senior Advisor of CSC Lab and former Minister of Korea Forest Service.
Thank you. His Excellency Toru Morikawa, Executive Director of Asia Europe Foundation, Mr. Eun-sik Park, DG of KFS, and Dr. Annette Juepner, Interim Director of UNDP Seoul Parish Center. Distinguished participants and ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to be here today with you at the seminar on the role of forestry as a nature-based solution to address climate change. It is very timely that we are on this quest today, just after the year of starting point of the Paris Agreement implementation and the year of agreement of the Glasgow Climate Pact during the UNFCCC's 26th conference of the parties held last year. At the end of last year, you know that the Glasgow Leader Declaration was officially announced. Unlike before, forests are now on the main agenda of the UN Climate Conference. Developed and developing countries agreed to cooperate to prevent forest loss and land degradation by 2030. In addition, advanced countries promised to contribute around $12 billion in public climate finance to a new global forest finance pledge for forest restoration and tropical forest conservation from 2021 to 2025. Because of this importance, and of course, because Korea was spotlighted as a host country for the 50th World Forest Congress, during the COP26, the Korean government has been enthusiastically responding to the global climate crisis while building a concrete legal framework and system around the 2050 carbon neutrality plan and announcing relevant scenarios. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been highlighting that the importance of forest in the climate crisis is being emphasized since they are the quickest and cheapest solution for absorbing greenhouse gas emissions. Beyond being carbon sinks, trees are the core of the ecosystem, providing clean air and water, as well as biodiversity and health soil. The entire globe should band together to safeguard and rehabilitate deforested area. In this sense, discussion like we are having today about the role of forest in climate change are ever more important. I would like to welcome you all for being able to gather excellent group of prominent speakers. I look forward to hearing from you today, who will discuss the role of forestry as a nature-based solution to address climate change, and exchange ideas on future climate-resilient forest programs. It is my strong wish that the knowledge and idea generated today will go beyond mere discussion. I hope that they will be translated into concrete and realistic plan for practice for further addressing the climate crisis through forest. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite Ambassador Toru Morikawa, Executive Director of Asia Europe Foundation, for congratulatory remarks.
Distinguished participants, good evening. A very warm greetings to you. On behalf of the Asia Europe Foundation, I'd like to extend our congratulations and deep gratitude to the Korea Forest Service, Korea Forest Welfare Institute, Korea Lottery Commission, the Center for Climate and Sustainable Development Law and Policy, CSDLAP, Seoul National University, Korea University, Korea University Graduate Program specialized in carbon sink, KUGPSCS, and the organizer of the event, the Center for Global Climate and Marine Governance, affiliated with the Global Research Institute of Korea University, CGC-MG. Today's side event addresses the challenge of keeping global warming at bay by providing green solutions, inspiring further actions focused on protecting and restoring Earth's green lungs. The side event contributes to the global effort framed under the Glasgow Leaders Declaration on Forests and Land Use, one of the most significant forest and land use pledges made during COP26 last year, and one that is very topical. Last week, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, UNCCD, published the second edition of the Global Land Outlook report. It stated that half of humanity is currently affected by land degradation, including deforestation. If we pursue business as usual, by 2050, an additional 250 billion tons of CO2 could be released in the atmosphere. This is 4 times our current global emissions of greenhouse gases. Thus, making our commitments and pledges come to naught. Decisive action is needed to avoid this scenario, and all tools available should be used, especially nature-based solutions. There has been a great deal of recent interest in nature-based solutions, NBS, as an approach to tackle climate change with social, economic, and environmental co-benefits. The preservation, the restoration, and the regrowth of forests is one of the best examples of nature-based solutions. Home to 80% of the world's terrestrial biodiversity, forests provide clean air and water, protect against erosion and landslides, and help to regulate the climate by removing carbon from the atmosphere. Undisturbed forests and grasslands are considered one of nature's greatest assets. Forests, in fact, play a vital role in limiting the average global temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. They act as significant carbon sinks, sequestering huge amounts of carbon in tree biomass and soils. Currently, forests absorb annually about 16 billion tons of CO2, or about 30% of mankind's greenhouse emissions. Global net emissions could be reduced by eliminating emissions from deforestation and increasing carbon removals by promoting forest regrowth and restoration. Nevertheless, as it is hard to put a clear monetary value on all their positive contributions, forests are exceedingly undervalued. While some estimate the value of the carbon they sequester to generally exceed the earnings that could be realized from converting them to other uses, and they often provide many additional ecosystem services. The true cost of deforestation and forest degradation is not considered when policy decisions are made on land use. As a result, approximately 12 million hectares of forest are destroyed annually. Southeast Asia, for example, home to nearly 15% of the world's tropical forest, is losing 1.2% of its forests annually. With deforestation, forests risk losing their ability to store carbon, releasing more CO2 than they absorb. With this in mind, we welcome global leaders' commitment to work collectively to halt and reverse forest loss and land degradation by 2030. Many things need to be done. For instance, developing and advocating for the inclusion of the value of forests when drawing up economic development plans or including the preservation of forests as a necessary element in such plans. We need more solid mechanisms and fundings to enhance NBS through forest preservation. However, based on 2019 figures, only 2% of funds available for climate change mitigation are available for efforts to reduce deforestation. While multilateral mechanisms such as UN REDD+ are already in place, more can be done to hasten the progress in conserving and restoring one of the planet's greatest assets. We need a shared strategy to realize the achievement of the Glasgow Leaders' Declaration on Forests and Land Use. The window of opportunity to halt the regression of our forests over the tipping point is small and narrowing. International dialogues, such as today's event, are important stepping stones in exploring practical solutions to improve sustainable forest management. I hope an insightful and fruitful discussion and look forward to learning from our panel of esteemed speakers. With that, I conclude my remarks. Thank you so much.
So I'd like to invite Eun-sik Park, Director General of International Affairs Bureau of Korea Forest Service.
Good evening. It is my great pleasure to see you today. My name is Eun-sik Park. I'm a Director General of International Affairs Bureau of Korea Forest Service. His Excellency Jong-ho Park, the Senior Advisor of the Center for Climate and Sustainable Development, Law and Policy, and the former Minister of the Korea Forest Service. Actually, he is my former boss. And then His Excellency Ambassador Toru Morikawa, the Executive Director of the Asia Europe Foundation. Dr. Ann Yunov, UNDP Seoul Policy Center. And His Excellency Dr. Gemedo Dalle, the former Minister of Environmental of Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and Dr. Susie Kerr, the Chief Economist of the Environmental Defense Fund, and Dr. Jung So-young, the Professor of Korea University, distinguished panelists and guests. I'd like to extend my sincere appreciation to all of you for participating in this event. The World Forest Congress, as the most influential forum in forest field, is joined by governments, international organizations, experts around the world to discuss a solution for global forestry issues. I look forward to the 15th World Forest Congress to become a great opportunity to share views and opinions together to promote nature-based solutions, increase of biodiversity, and sustainable forest management, as well as to address the climate crisis issues such as forest fire, desertification, and dry climate. I attended the UNFCCC COP26 last year as a delegation of the Republic of Korea. That time, a lot of outcomes of forest were announced. Especially, it was meaningful that the numerous parties of the UNFCCC committed together to conserve and protect tropical forests, including Congo Basin forest. On top of that, significantly, there were much stronger consensus and commitment on forest cooperation from the global society through the Glasgow Leaders Declaration on Forest and Land Use and the Global Forest Finance Pledge. This event's theme, the nature-based solution, is defined as actions to protect, sustainably manage, and restore natural ecosystems that address societal and environmental challenges effectively and adaptively, including climate change, food and water security, and natural disasters. In other words, the nature-based solution can benefit society and environment by conserving and restoring the nature based on the power of functioning ecosystems rather than existing technology-dependent approach. The government of the Republic of Korea included the nature-based solution in the implementation plan of carbon neutrality in 2021 to make forest function as carbon sink actively for addressing climate change. The Paris Agreement highlights conservation and enhancement of the carbon sink, but partially recognizes the emission reductions in agriculture, forestry, and other land use sector. In this regard, I believe that the forestry can play a crucial role in expanding the scope of the sector's carbon sink activities acknowledged. Especially, it's my hope that the forest-based nature-based solution activities, including REDD+, forest carbon offset system, mangroves restoration, agroforestry, biomass production can be also recognized as the activities to contribute to the nationally determined contribution. ODA project on forest cooperation is a flagship nature-based solution project to tackle environmental issues such as climate change and desertification, as well as to improve livelihood and income generation of local community through planting trees. The Korea Forest Service is implementing ODA project worth of about $2.5 million US for 5 years so that Vietnam can prevent natural disasters through restoring its mangrove forest of 330 hectares and improve income generation of agriculture and fishery industries by restoring coastal ecosystem and creating conditions to increase fishery resources. In addition, the REDD+ as a leading nature-based solution activity aims to encourage developing countries to contribute to climate change mitigation efforts by preventing deforestation and forest degradation and enhancing forest carbon sinks. Now, the Korea Forest Service is carrying out the pilot project in Cambodia, Myanmar, and Laos PDR while discussing expansion of the scope of the project to private sector. Now is the time to forge green recovery through forest. The Korea Forest Service has established the K-Forest policy, which is part of the Green New Deal project to enhance capabilities to achieve green recovery, create new jobs in forest sector, and expanding ODA project on forest restoration and disaster management. Actually, this K-Forest policy was introduced and established by the former minister right next to me, Dr. Park Jong-ho, and this is our main policy of in forest sector now. It's widely known that the forests are at the heart of the nature-based solutions to overcome climate crisis. I hope today there will be a fruitful discussions of the role of forests in these meaningful events. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So finally, I'd like to invite Dr. Ann Eupner, Interim Director of UNDP, Seoul Policy Center.
Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, I'm delighted to open today's session on the role of forestry in addressing climate change alongside such an esteemed panel. I would like to express my gratitude to the Center for Global Climate and Marine Governance at Korea University for organizing this event, and to the Korea Forest Service for graciously hosting it. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Professor Soo-Young Chung for being such an excellent partner for the UNDP Seoul Policy Center over many years. Let me take this opportunity to highlight again what brought all of us together here today. Last month, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released a report focusing on climate change mitigation. The report emphasized that the window to prevent global temperatures from rising by more than 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial averages is rapidly closing. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres emphasized that unless action is taken now, we are on a fast track to climate disaster with major cities underwater, unprecedented heat waves, widespread water shortages, and the extinction of 1 million species of plants and animals. In this context, the report also emphasized that protecting, restoring, and sustainably managing carbon-rich ecosystems like forests can play an exceptionally great role in mitigation efforts, as deforestation alone accounts for 45% of greenhouse gas emissions from the land sector. We have a significant opportunity to assess something at the heart of these challenges, our relationship with nature and how we take decisive climate action. UNDP is committing to putting nature at the very center of sustainable development and to support countries in advancing their green, inclusive transitions. There's absolutely no doubt about the urgent need to act. Hence, today's discussion on the forestry sector as a climate solution, along with ways to strengthen cooperation among experts and young researchers, is vital to this global call for action. Let me end by congratulating the organizers for this very timely event and encourage everyone participating to continue working on the protection of our forests and ecosystems and contributing to turning climate promises into action. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now, rest of the opening ceremony and group photo will be held. And after the photo session and organize the place, we will continue keynote speech and panel discussion. Thank you. Thank you for your cooperation. Now, we'd like to begin the event with keynote speech. We already have 2 keynote speakers, but unfortunately, Dr. Gemet Dal, one of planned keynote speaker, cannot come to this side event. So we are really sorry to say this news to all. And now we will move on to the next speaker. The next speaker is Dr. Susie Kerr, Chief Economist at EDF, and she would speak with the public-private partnership in implementing REDD+.
Kia ora tātou. It's a great pleasure to be able to join you, even if only virtually, for this important workshop. So I want to talk today about public-private partnerships for implementing REDD and the exciting new possibilities. As we all know, we need a lot more ambition and action in order to achieve the climate goals that we are all working hard towards. Pledges are woefully insufficient. That's going to mean that REDD and various natural climate solutions can have an extremely important role in helping to stabilize our climate. Both reforestation and avoided deforestation have really significant potential, potentially up to 30% or 29% of net reductions that are needed, and even higher percentage if it's a 1.5 degree pathway. For deforestation in particular, we need to act now because avoiding the loss of forest is a much more effective way of protecting carbon than losing it and then trying to restore it. Restoration can be very, very slow and may never reach the levels that it was at previously. An optimistic message is that it is definitely possible to actually reduce deforestation. So the Brazilian example in the Amazon is a really vivid case of this. So what this picture is showing you is levels of annual deforestation in the Amazon. And as you can see, up till 2004, the levels of deforestation are rising rapidly to an extremely high peak, above 1,500 million tons of CO2 equivalent being lost each year by 2004. 2004 is the year in which the Brazilian government really began to act seriously with the plan for prevention and control of deforestation. And what you see is a dramatic drop in deforestation rates, not getting to zero yet, but falling down really significantly by 2012. And significantly, at the same time, you do not see a reduction in food production from the Amazon. The levels of food production of soybeans and cattle continue to rise right through the period. And also significantly, although deforestation begins to rise again under Bolsonaro, who was actively encouraging development in the Amazon, it still hasn't reached anything like the levels of deforestation that Brazil saw historically. So key messages that I'd love you to take away from this is that private capital and engagement by private companies is critical to support rapid, effective action. Jurisdictional agreements are key for effectiveness and integrity, and they also require some level of public sector involvement. You can't do this with only the private sector. Jurisdictional agreements can support high integrity markets that private actors can then participate, and that would include potentially Korean companies. So an outline of what I would like to talk about. First, I want to just briefly flag a project that we are working on actively now called the Natural Climate Solutions Handbook Project. I then want to discuss the role of markets as part of the solution for REDD+. I want to talk about jurisdictional agreements in particular, and then talk about some very specific initiatives that are already in action where the private sector can engage. So this Natural Climate Solutions Crediting project is one that we've been working on for the last 18 months at EDF and with many other partners in both the private and the NGO sectors. We are writing a series of briefing notes on different issues and also aiming to produce a handbook in a way that is similar to the emissions trading system handbook that EDF and other partners were involved with in the past, including possibly some of those of you in the audience. We've just released our first briefing note in the series, and there will be a series of them coming out over the coming months. The purpose of the project is first to reduce confusion. There's a lot of confusion about how natural climate solutions work, how the private and public markets fit together, etc. And we hope that we can help to reduce that. We want to provide some technical solutions to some of the challenges where we are all struggling. And we want to help focus informed debate so that it can be focused on the things where there really are value judgments involved, rather than on issues that are primarily science or economics based. The issues covered are 4. So first, issues around getting high integrity. There's no point in having a crediting system if you're not really making a difference. Second, focusing on equity, making sure there's equity as credits are created, as they are traded, and in the communities or jurisdictions where they're actually used. Facilitating and governing trades, looking at the institutions that are needed there and how well they're working and how they can better integrate. And finally, really focusing on the mitigation activities themselves, but just the piece of that that's relating to finance, how we finance those mitigation activities and make sure that they have the capacity to actually do the mitigation on the ground. So second thing I want to talk about is the role of markets. Analysis by EDF and now by several others, including IETA, shows that carbon markets can really increase the scope for ambition by reducing the costs and using that extra resource that is freed up for additional reductions. Without forests, you can increase ambition by about 40 to 50%, but including forestry as an option, you can potentially double or close to double your climate ambition without increasing total costs. So it's really important that we try to make carbon markets work much better, make this a doable challenge. So why use markets? It's one critical means to transfer significant resources towards those who actually have the ability to protect and restore natural carbon stocks, and particularly to developing countries where the opportunities for mitigation are great and resources are scarce, and to local communities and the Indigenous people within them who are living close to the forests and the natural climate solutions. Markets can enable action, carbon markets, because they make protecting forests more profitable than cutting it down, and they can incentivize action by actors who may otherwise not be particularly interested in protecting forests or in planting forests, but the economic driver gives them a reason to engage. They can mobilize capital to support change. So the market is buying and selling of credits, and there's money involved in that, but also you need the finance to actually do the changes in infrastructure for agricultural sectors, where they're moving away from agriculture that causes deforestation, or capital for planting trees and developing a forestry industry in a place that doesn't currently have it. That is important capital to mobilize as well. Markets are not something that are a full solution to the problem, but they can really complement and finance non-market efforts. And a massive scaling up is required in markets. The clean development mechanism has had all sorts of flaws, but it's also operated at much too low a scale. So if you were to achieve the trades that are associated with that doubling of ambition I mentioned a moment ago, that would involve 2 to 4 billion tonnes of emission credits being traded annually through to 2035. And that's 100 to 200 billion of funds transferred annually through markets from developed to developing countries. So that's on a massive scale relative to current public sector pledges, and it's not loans, this is actually resources. And in contrast, under the Clean Development Mechanism, 4 billion units have been created cumulatively over the entire period since 2001. So the mechanisms that we have at the moment are not sufficient. It's not enough to just scale them up. We actually need to adapt and develop new mechanisms that are more effective, that can operate at a larger scale. On a positive note, we have experienced now that pricing can work for forestry, and in particular, both avoiding deforestation and leading to reforestation. This experience that I'll discuss here comes from New Zealand, where a market for forestry has been operating since 2009. And this is not a project-based market. It's a market that is integrated into emissions trading, and it covers the whole forestry sector. So what we see in the results from some of the analysis, the blue line is the New Zealand unit price, which is on the right-hand axis. The green is reforestation and the yellow is deforestation. And in the early years, the carbon price in the market was reasonably healthy. It was above 15 New Zealand dollars. And after a lag, because it takes time to grow trees and plant them, it led to a significant increase in planting relative to what was happening otherwise. This is a period where forestry was not very profitable in New Zealand, just for purely commercial reasons. And because the price was quite high, it led deforestation to drop to zero, which had previously been positive, partly in anticipation of this. But then with the financial crisis and the rapid growth in the Clean Development Mechanism, international carbon prices collapsed, and with them, the level of planting in New Zealand also fell down quite dramatically. And the level of deforestation, which was being reported, it rose again. So you ended up with positive deforestation for a few years. And then, luckily, after 2016, well, not luckily, with a lot of work, the emissions trading price in New Zealand rose again, and with a little bit of lag, not only because of tree planting, but also having to regain the trust of the sector. The level of planting has risen dramatically. And since this graph, the carbon price has risen, has more than doubled, and so has the replanting rate as well. So it really is working. But New Zealand is a very strange country. It's a country where you can function with a regulation that operates at a landowner level. In many countries, that's just not going to work. Either the landowners own too little land, as I understand is true in Korea, or there isn't the capacity to actually enforce compliance and provide incentives at that landowner level on a really large scale like this. And this is where jurisdictional crediting can be extremely valuable. So jurisdictions are some sort of body which is a legal entity. It could be a country, it could be a state within the country, or it could be a municipality. It needs to have some sort of legal existence. It could be an Indigenous community that owns a number of different pieces of land or a large area of land. And so what happens is that you're doing the effort at that large level. The baseline is created at the large level. The monitoring is done at the large level. Of course, the efforts are happening all over the place at different levels. So it's not just a lot of small projects added together. It actually is a fundamentally different approach. And why would you do this at a jurisdictional level? It's to enable systemic effective change. You can support a wide range of actions, not only projects that operate with individual landowners or communities, but also changes in decisions around roads, supporting forestry enforcement, changes in the soy sector, for example, so it becomes more intensive and puts less pressure on forests. And doing it at a jurisdictional scale completely avoids any leakage within the jurisdiction because the monitoring is done at the jurisdictional scale. Doing it jurisdictional also increases the transparency of information because the information sources are now public sources. They come from government or they're done through remote sensing rather than involving a lot of private information that only the landowners can ever know. That allows mobilization of external support for systemic changes and also leads to a massive improvement in the additionality of the credits that are created. So a massive improvement in integrity. It also potentially can lead to low transactions costs per tonne. There is a big initial effort to create these systems, but once they're created, if they can produce large reductions, you don't have ongoing management at a very micro level in the way that you do with projects. Driving deforestation is not something that the public sector can do on its own. It needs private capital, it needs private knowledge and action. It's also not something that the private sector can do alone because it does require changes in government processes in order to really get effective action on the ground. And it needs to fit in with UN frameworks and with country climate change frameworks now, or otherwise private efforts are either ineffective or you get double counting type problems. So public funding in the REDD space has been really effective at providing the capacity, but we need the private sector to get involved to scale this up. So at the moment, public funding for REDD is around $1 billion. We need to about 8 billion in order to meet current NDCs. But to really meet our climate goals, we need something on the order of $40 billion. And that's something that can only come from the private sector. A massive initiative that is trying to attract this this work is the Green Gigaton Challenge. It's a private-public coalition to encourage companies and governments to commit funding that would support a gigaton of jurisdictional scale forest conservation and restoration annually. You can see more about that on some of the websites. So we have the conditions in place for large-scale private finance. The public finance has created the readiness programs, the monitoring, the institutions, the multilateral and international frameworks are now all in place and defined. The ART trees standard has high integrity standards negotiated among many key players, strong MRV standards. And one of the final pieces is the LEAF Coalition and the Emergent Forest Finance Accelerator. It's a non-profit finance intermediary to aggregate the supply and the demand and facilitate these really large-scale transactions. So please check out leafcoalition.org if you're interested in more detail on that. So some final thoughts. The public and private sectors need to work together at a jurisdictional scale if we're going to meaningfully implement RADD+. It's now possible. We know it's possible, and many of the building blocks are in place. So this is the time for action. It's not just about cash, though the cash is obviously critical. Capacity on the ground is critical as well. So developing country governments and private companies can engage locally and really help to strengthen the capacity of those local jurisdictions and local players to facilitate rapid implementation of effective action. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So the next session is panel discussion, and Seo Jung, professor of Korea University, would take moderator of a panel discussion.
Thank you, Puyon, for your part. And then, as introduced, my name is Seo Chung. I'm a professor at the Korea University, also director of the Center for Climate and Sustainable Development Law and Policy, in other words, CS Lab, which is one of the co-hosting organizations. Before we start to have panel discussions, I would like to take this opportunity, this chance as an opportunity to say thanks for all the foreign speakers and then audience who are attending and participating in this event online. I do appreciate your time and efforts to join our event today. Well, let me just talk about some of the initial thoughts about what is the role of the forestry as a nature-based solution to address climate change. You know, usually when you think about the forestry and plants, we're thinking about just green, maybe something about the peace, and then we actually didn't think about how much it can contribute to address climate change, right? Because forest is one of the very important source of absorbing CO2s from the atmosphere. In that regard, that recently many studies, scientific studies, not political, but the scientific studies revealed the fact that potential benefits of the forestry, actually, which can make great contributions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Right. At the same time, most of those activities can be done in the mainly developing countries. Then if we can nicely design the system and mechanism actually to have a forestry sector contribute to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, then it will lead to a chance for those developing countries to identify as a new engine of growth for their society. So forestry has a lot of potentials in the climate world. And then as we just saw, Susie Kerr, one of my colleagues working at the Environment Defense Fund, revealed how we can make all of these things workable, also how we can get not only public sector, also private sector involved. You saw the number that she was showing. It's a lot, actually. We can get immediately the about 1 gigatons of the CO2 in the forest sector. It's ready. Other sectors, we need to still wait for a certain period. But forest sector, because of the past activities and efforts done in this sector to address climate change, actually there are ready-made credits available that can be used to help other countries or private sector to meet their goals if there is any. So having said that, we missed the important speaker from Ethiopia, Dr. Gomedo, who is the country representative of the Global Green Growth Institute in Ethiopia, who was actually former minister of Ethiopian government. That I met him when he was in his office, and then initial presentation was planned to introduce the $12 million project in Ethiopia in the forest sector, which is being implemented by the Global Green Growth Institute and funded by the KOICA, the ODA agency of the Republic of Korea. And then this project will help Ethiopian government actually not only to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also actually create new jobs for the local people while being engaging in the implementation of the big project that can be linked to the federal government level later on. So we are sorry that we missed that presentation. Maybe something about the internet connection problem happened with him, and I feel very sorry. But this will be the essence that he wanted to convey to us today. And then now we have 5 speakers. Then one of the features that we tries to make in this event today is that the final panelist is a student of the Korea University. So we know not only in Korea, but in the world in general, that MZ generation is making a lot of voices. So I feel excited actually to have that speaker in today's discussions. Having said that, let me introduce the first speaker, Grażyna Polaska, Associate Director of the Asia-Europe Foundation. As you may not know, that the Asia-Europe Foundation is official foundation under the ASEM process. That's a political process between Europe and Asia, and that is located in Singapore. And so, Gina, are you ready for your participation?
I would like to warmly welcome everyone in Seoul. We are, as usual, delighted to collaborate with Professor Chung and on this important topic. As Asia-Europe Foundation, we have been preparing since last year to embark on the new endeavor that would be related to working on the nature-based solutions project. Which will be looking, among other solutions, into the forestry. And today I would like to briefly introduce the important part of the forestry discussion that is also related with urban nature-based solution that are looking into the from the perspective of global forest, the tiny part, but very crucial part that is related to urban forestry. So having said that, I just would like to briefly acknowledge Dr. Dora Almasi from Central European University, as they will be joining us for this project as a collaboration, and I will share the more details later. Can I have next slide? So in general, what I would like to present today is the short introduction to the concept, urban nature atlas and selected case studies, and my takeaways that have been identified during the implementation of the project in EU. Next one, please. We have been using for this project the IUCN definition. As you all know, the UNIA has also integrated the nature-based solution definition. We have now multilaterally the big agreement on what do we call nature-based solutions. But in general, I just wanted to say that from our perspective, what we will be looking at very strongly is to making sure we integrate all aspects related with nature, as well as social capital and community-based involvement in the implementation of the different projects and activities. Next one, please. So this project that we will be starting is closely related to the Urban Nature Atlas. And then from Asia-Europe Foundation side, we will be looking at ASEAN region and also at Asia, and further on, hopefully expanding by making the match for the European Union Urban Nature-Based Solutions Atlas, when we will identify the nature-based solutions in the cities and further on try to see what are the lessons learned among Asians and Europeans with regards to nature-based solution. And particularly today, I will just focus on the urban forestry. Next one, please. So before I start, I would like to do some advertisement because not everybody knows, like, the globally still the biggest database of urban nature-based solutions is Urban Nature Atlas. This has been the project that was implemented with the funding of European Union Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program. And then it has gathered over 1,000 case studies, as well as developed methodology that has been copied globally by different think tanks and research institutes, because the Central European University was very generous to share the data and methodology as well. Can I have next one? So this is how it looks like, and I would like to all of you that are interested in the project to visit the website. And without any further ado, I just would like to focus on the specifically forestry related case studies. However, this database allows you to search using different criteria depending on your own needs in the community. Can I have next one? So in general, when you look at the nature-based solutions that are looking into cities and improving the livability, as well as carbon sequestration, in general, addressing different kind of environmental pollution challenges and CO2 emissions, parks and urban forests are quite significant, and they are both looking into climate change adaptation and climate change mitigation as the solutions. However, there are other ideas that can be used, including green infrastructure, nature on buildings, and then looking into other things that are related with community gardens, for example. Can I have next one, please? And then it's not always the forest that is in the city or the park that is in the city. This specific example in Timișoara in Romania is showing the agricultural area when the city has decided that they would like to use forest not only as this carbon mitigation tool, but also to protect the city from very strong wind that was coming. And then it has been implemented in collaboration with the local community, which has made it, even though the project itself already finished, it had made it very sustainable, and then the forest is still growing in the sense that there was added value for the community that has been involved in the implementation of the project. Next one, please. There is another example from Kazakhstan when you are looking at the green belt that was created. And then usually when you think about urban forestry, the first idea might be connected with the fact that it looks nice. However, it is also having very important role by acting as a lungs for the city. And then in general, when we are looking at this specific case study, the forest that has been planted, which is called Greenbelt now, of Nur Sultan, is around 100,000 hectares. And then a part of it is within city and part of it is outside the city. And then what is important is also that it has been implemented also taking into account biodiversity, where you have different type of animal life, and the community has been also very strongly integrated into design and consultation process. Next one, please. Then there is another example that looks a little bit different when it has been used as a function of a green commute in Hamburg, when it was mostly implemented in the residential and public green space area in the central business district. And then the green network absorbs quite significant amount of CO2, but also prevent flooding, which makes it even more sustainable and helpful for the local community. And then in general, it serves as a cycling path, and it allows not only for the CO2 mitigation, but also for the recreational purposes. Next one, please. This has very poetic name, which is Library of Trees, and this is the example from Italy, when it has been designed, the park. It has been designed to add additional component between municipality offices, fashion and culture related buildings, and trade connection in the residential area. So it has been used also as an artistic approach to how the city looks like, to have this additional function that is also aesthetic, not only looking into mitigation in the city and addressing the problem. And if we can skip now to like the summary slide. There is a couple of more cases, but I just, can I have next one? Yes. So I wanted to spark some curiosity from your side by showing different examples, and just I would like to focus on main takeaways that has been also mentioned by my by previous speakers when they were discussing nature-based solutions, specifically looking at the urban forestation efforts. So first and foremost, they do have important role in sequestering carbon. They also reduce urban heat islands. So given the amount of people that is now living in cities and the quality of life and ongoing discussion, and also IPCC report that is looking into the increased temperature rise, this could be one of the potential strategies that we could look at to ensure that we do implement on regular basis solutions that are affordable, but at the same time, they have quite significant impact. Those urban forests also act as a green belts around the cities and regulate microclimate and address the desertification and improve soil quality, etc., as a couple of examples that I have been sharing. And in general, there have been also lessons learned, because once the data was collected to look at the different case studies, there was also some initial evaluation conducted within the project when they looked at what actually made such a project successful, because the cases I have been sharing with you are those that has been initiated, but then later on they took the liberty to, and then they started to live their own lives. So it is related with making sure that there is diverse vegetation and not monocultural plantations. And then virus species are implemented in the system, as well as this aspect of building it with community in the consultations with the local population. It makes this added value when they can actually add on a significant quality to the implemented project. And then those projects start usually to have their own life after they have been implemented. And I think for now, that would be all from our side. We would like to strongly invite you all to our future endeavors, and especially once we start to collaboration with the cities in implementing the project itself. And this will be something that definitely we will sooner or later try to share the outcomes and to see what are the common areas and what is common for Asian and European cities, specifically with nature-based solutions and urban forestation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gina. By the way, your glasses are looking good today, right? I love it, right? I do wish that we could have you actually here in the conference room. Anyway, Asia Europe Foundation shared their efforts to enhance the role of the forestry, especially in the urban areas. And then she introduced several cases that have been addressed by Asia Europe Foundation and their partners. So thank you very much again, Gina. Because of time limit, without further ado, I'd like to invite the second discussant, Professor Munkbar Kishingigargar. Always it's difficult to pronounce your name well. She is the professor of Mongolian University of Life Science. As you may know, that this university is one of the leading national universities in Mongolia. And then she kindly agreed to join us by sharing some of the good thoughts of her. So floor is yours now.
Thank you very much. That's a nice introduction about me. And it is an honor to me to participate in this fine side event. And thank you very much for Professor Soo-yeon Choi for your very important effort to inviting me and give us this chance to participate in this discussion panel first. So excuse me, so sorry for I could not prepare a PPT presentation, but I can say my main ideas briefly to further discussions regarding to our main topic, practical solutions, natural-based solutions for addressed on climate change issues in worldwide. So in my mind, I'm a first ecology, and now I'm participating from Germany, from Freiburg University. So my research focus is especially focusing on treating growth response under climate warming, which is especially focused on how nature trees response, increasing aridity, increasing climate warming issues. And our research covers in all over Central Asia, especially arid and semi-arid region in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Northern Mongolia as well. And Professor Soo-yeon Choi mentioned about that scientific research is much more important for our main topic, main question, and nature-based solutions to address climate change. So initial research finds some of initial results shows that in Central Asia, especially in arid region, most of conifer trees growth is totally decreased. And secondly, in the upper level, at the high mountain zone, tree growth is increased, but in lower level, in first step Ecoton zone, nearby cities, nearby lower area, nearby settlement, all of tree growth is totally declined. So this is strongly depends increasing climate warming, and this is my previous research teams and some of the findings, and it will be give some articles after several months, hopefully. And regarding to the our topic and former talk, and also Dr. Susie Kerr's talk, I have 2-3 ideas. How can we improve our main issue? So first is I wanted to highlight we would like to develop practical solutions, including local units. It is internationally, I mean, multilateral networking. It's really important for us, seems in all of those movements and all of those programs, greening and increasing plantation or billion on several billion trees, forestation, and increasing restoration issues. In case of Mongolia, we just start 1 billion tree forestation program is just starting, but we need really, we need to choose really important practical solutions. Which one is important and fruitful in the future? And second one is especially upper level graduate or bachelor or graduate level students and researchers, young researchers, specialists. We need to organize somehow multilateral networking and internationally, like organizing international summer or winter schools or internship programs, especially focusing on afforestation, restoration programs. Somehow, just an example, some of the Mongolian young scientists go to Korean university forestry programming for exchanging, not officially, but learning by doing by learning to improve the capacities and improve networking issues. And then, yeah, so this is the two main issues in my mind, and I will wish you all of those success and all of good things for our next discussions and fruitful outputs. Thank you.
Thank you. So our first keynote speech by Dr. Susie Kerr was covering mainly the stories in tropical region. And then there are a lot of opportunities to generate the sort of carbon removals. In other words, absorbing CO2s. And then, as you know, the Mongolia and some other countries that this professor mentioned, it comes from dry lands, and that there are different characteristics. And then, therefore, we need to have different approaches. And then many countries in those areas, including tropical areas, are developing countries. And then one of the key points that Professor just emphasized is, as I understand, then building networks among the similar countries in those areas, number one. Number two, in case of the developing countries, we need to work together to enhance the capacity of those developing countries to better address forestry issues in the context of addressing climate change by themselves. So to do so, there are various needs available, and then I think that we may have some resources actually to work together with them. So this is some of the takeaways that I got from this presentation. Next presenter is Professor Motuma Tolera from Ethiopia. I used to work with Ethiopian colleagues, and then it often happens actually their internet connection problem. It seems like there is some issues with Ethiopia today. And then I know that Dean Motuma joined our meeting, and then he was disconnected, and it happens constantly at this time that I don't see him. In case he comes back, then of course I will give a floor to him. Otherwise, I need to go to the next discussant. That's Professor Taekyung Yoon Taekyung, Assistant Professor of Sangji University. So Professor Yoon, floor is yours.
Okay, hello. My name is Taekyung Yoon from Sangji University, which is located at the heart of mountainous forest area in South Korea. Oh, it is a great honor for me to be invited to give a speech in this great side event. I would like to thank to all participants and also Professor Seoyoung Jung tonight. As a forest scientist, I'm very pleased with the fact that forests can play an important role in mitigating climate change. Yes, in other words, through the processes of photosynthesis and tree growth, forests not only absorb greenhouse gases, but also forest develop itself and nurture various living things in forest ecosystems and also return more ecosystem services in human society. The use of forests as nature-based solutions can be a great concept that benefits everyone. However, although the principle of nature-based solution using forests through carbon uptake by forests may appear clear and straightforward, however, there are many challenges realizing it in real society. In particular, keeping nature in its natural state is not everything of nature-based solution, in my opinion. Of course, it is clearly important to conserve biodiversity in forest ecosystems while minimizing human activation, human use, or human disturbances. And preserving nature processes in the nature ecosystem must be a part of a nature-based solution for mitigating climate change. However, nature-based solution should not leave everything to nature. If necessary, nature ecosystem should be controlled and managed or modified in very clever ways. I know it sounds very anthropocentric. In particular, nature has its limits. The carbon uptake capacities of forest ecosystems are not unlimited and need to be sustained through appropriate human intervention. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. I forgot using this PowerPoint slide. Sorry.
Well, I just thought that you had only one. So,
Excuse me.
That's fine, Professor. Right.
It is not working. Excuse me. Okay.
Right.
Now it's
working. Right.
Okay. In the last year in South Korea, a societal conflict broke out over the Korea Forest Service's forest policy plan for achieving 2050 forest carbon net zero plan. The plan included the gradual harvesting of mature forests in which the carbon uptake capacities are expected to reduce, and also expansion of forest carbon sinks by planting 3 billion trees, and also deactivate use of woody material in society. Accordingly, environmental groups in South Korea were seriously concerned the large-scale deforestation and loss of biodiversity caused by this policy plan. Since the policy announcement, the plan has been debated for several months in South Korean society, and I was able to learn 3 lessons from the series of this process. Excuse me. Okay. First, we need more communication. Ever since the controversy related to this carbon net zero plan was raised last year, there has been a lot of discussion about it among various society members. The different views of the members about the plan collided for a while, and the arguments were at times inconvenient and even painful. However, we were able to successfully reach an agreement on the issue among the society members. At the same time, forest scientists tried to transfer their scientific knowledge and data to society about forest carbon processes. Thus, in the process of promoting the use of forestry as a nature-based solution, open communication among various stakeholders is very important. Excuse me. Okay. Second, we need more science. As a forest scientist, I dare say that as much as we know about carbon processes in forest ecosystem, there is still a lot we don't know yet. Nature ecosystems are highly complex and variable. Therefore, and the existing scientific knowledge about forest carbon processes is by no means complete. More scientific research using advanced technology is needed. Also, we need to establish and implement a forest carbon uptake plan based on the best knowledge and data available so far. But at the same time, it is necessary to continue adaptive management according to the characteristics of the field sites with continuous monitoring. Last, we have to think about balance. Although climate change and carbon is a very important issue today, they are not everything. In the decision-making process surrounding forest management, there are lots of important values such as biodiversity, environmental protection, forestry income, and forestry recreational use, so on. So they should be considered on the same plane as the carbon issue. It's like a trade-off. If you can solve carbon problem, you may lose something else. Therefore, we should carefully identify the trade-off among the various values and optimize them. To do this, don't forget the balance. After this, After this meeting, I will return to my local area and nurture future generation who will lead nature-based solutions using forest management. I will also continue to conduct scientific research to accurately evaluate the carbon processes in forest ecosystems and try to investigate ways to improve those values. Please keep paying a lot of attention to the use of forest as a nature-based solutions. This concludes my speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Yoon. For your information, Professor Yoon started his career as a professor not that long time ago. He's fresh, actually, in this teaching world. And then we could still feel his enthusiasm and the passion about this world. And then I was told that Professor Yoon is very much working together with his lovely students at the Sangji University. I know that he graduated from the Korea University, and in the sense, as a Korea University faculty member, I also felt the spirit of Korea University. So thank you very much for sharing your good thoughts with us today. Now. As I said, another speaker, Dean Motuma, is still struggling. He is in and out now. So in the meantime, I'd like to invite the last panelist today, Jimin Kim. She's an undergraduate student of the Korean University. So Jimin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor. So it is an absolute honor for me as a student to be here present with such experts within the area. And other than that, I would like to present what I can bring to the table, which is the perspective of youth. And perhaps many of us here are within the same generation that we like to refer to as the MZ generation. And the outline of the presentation, which I named Connecting Youth to Forestry, is based as follows. There we go. So first of all, we would like to connect youth with climate change, youth with forestry, and then based on that, look at the key challenges that have been identified, which then summarizes to connecting youth to the topic. So starting first with what is climate change and youth, understand the terms behind this is that with climate change, I'll be extremely brief given that we all know what it is. And it refers to the shift of the standard temperatures or the weather, the climate that is set within a region that tends to be as a reflection of human activities. And here, by youth, I went for a specific definition, which was the MZ generation, which is a combination of millennials and Gen Z. So it would be mostly today's people within their 20s and 30s. We can expand that a bit more to the 10s and then the 40s. And the characteristic that we can find between this MZ generation is that climate activism is quite widespread. The way that we've approached this issue has been through social media as well as making our voices heard. And as Pew Research Center would like to state, we like talking about it, we like seeing it on our daily basis through social media. But this has also been reflected as an increasing trend in leisure activities that are connected to what is nature, whether it be through hiking, which tends to be the South Koreans' most favorite activity, or through vlogging, which is a combination of walking around and picking up trash as a greening method. So I went brief on this on a quick survey where I asked about 4 questions, which first of all was about how connected we feel today as youth to what are our forests. And based on a scale of 1 to 5, looking at 1 as not connected at all and 5 being the most connected, the results averaged to a 2.6, which is on the lower side of results. And the reasons behind this, which I will get deeper in the latter section of the presentation, seem to be connected with the idea that because we live in cities, which most respondents were from Seoul, there is a distance from what our forests or overall nature unless we actively go access those little spaces that we have. And then when we think of forests, I summarize the keywords into being green, trees, and nature, which is not surprising, but there seems to be a very one-dimensional ideology behind what we see as forests. And then the last question was about how important we feel forests are today to our daily lives. And based on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is not important at all and 5 being the most important, the results were surprisingly high, which was a 4.8. And this seems to indicate a gap between what we are understanding of forests and what we see on a daily basis. So looking at youth connectivity to forestry and through different scales of understanding, I was able to recognize 3 main scales of approach, which looking at the macro scale, which we define as the understanding of the role that forests can have in addressing climate change, is that we have a high understanding of it. We know forests are critical in addressing climate change, and we also know that it has become one of our main characteristics as the MZ generation, that we are very active in terms of the subject. And then look at the mesoscale, where we try to understand forests on their own as an ecosystem, as a system of its own. There seems to be a middle understanding where we know because we learned about it, but perhaps we don't exactly feel connected to it on a personal level. And then looking at a micro level, we have the role of the individual directly invested into forestry, where there seems to be a low understanding of it in the sense that the impression seems to be limited to that of perhaps planting trees is the main way of action that we can take, when in reality there are more options when we think of forestry as a nature-based solution. So based on this, I was able to identify 3 key challenges. And the surprising thing about the previous micro scale of understanding of forestry was that there is an absence of the recognition of the individual as an active subject in terms of addressing forestry. So the key challenges were summarized as follows. And first of all, we need to expand upon existing knowledge of what we know of forests to understand forestry as a nature-based solution, which tends to imply a different understanding of it, where we do not only see forests as an environmental factor, but rather as an active solution that we can involve ourselves with. And then looking at the dichotomy that exists between what is the city and forest. There seems to be a gap between the two, which does not necessarily stand true as we've seen in previous panelists. And then the last thing is creating awareness about where we stand within the ecosystem. So previously I mentioned that there is a surprising absence of the individual within the subject, but we need to also find ourselves located within the ecosystem as a member of it, not as an outsider or as an observer of it. So this 3 words kind of summarize what we need to take on connecting youth to the idea of forestry as a nature-based solution, which first of all is explaining the concept. First of all, we do know what forests are. We do see them on a daily basis. We are able to recognize them, but there has to be, once again, understanding of forestry as a nature-based solution, which implies a different approach, whether it be structural, a ecosystem approach, etc. And then we have to contextualize it, which I believe is quite essential, since if we don't see on a daily basis or don't feel individually connected to it, then there is a lack of activism or a lack of motivation in involving ourselves to the issue. So bringing forestry to an urban context might help with this issue, since we do like to connect on a daily basis more than on special occasions. And then last but not least, I believe involvement is important in the sense that we have to go beyond awareness and turn youth into active stakeholders. So I believe this kind of summarizes into the idea of urban forests as a starting point to addressing and connecting youth to forestry, in the sense that, speaking from a South Korean perspective, 81% of the urban population is 81% of the population is in urban contexts, according to the World Bank, and we have to break away from the misconception that it is not only about planting trees, but also about accessing on a daily basis and acting as part of an ecosystem. So city parks can be an example of green infrastructure, which is a nature-based solution. We also have to understand that trees are components of a system, not the forest itself. And then we also have to look at governance, where we look at the different stakeholders and understand youth as perhaps a different group or part of certain groups that are already existent. And that being said, that summarizes my approach in the sense that youth's interest in terms of climate change or forestry is present, but we just need to channel a bit better those ideas into connecting towards a more holistic approach to the issue and a more concrete understanding of what are nature-based solutions. So based on this, there are 2 missing links that we have to connect, which is forests as nature-based solutions, and then the idea the individual can take in the ecosystem in regards to forestry. So summarizing that into the 3 keywords being explained, contextualize, involve, I finished off with the idea of urban forests as a starting point for connecting youth to forestry. And that being said, that'll be it for my presentation. Thank you.
Wow. If I rank the several presentations, including myself, which one was the best, which one was the worst, and I know that I was the worst, and then Jimin's must be the best, right? So when I decided to become a professor, one of the main reasons is that to become a teacher, actually you have a great privilege sometimes to change the entire life of one person, right? Hopefully in a good way. Right? That's one of the main reasons. And then I think that I'm achieving that goal, right? If not all, but, partially at least today, right? Thank you very much, Jimin, for your, insight of thoughts on the issue that you choose to present on today. So unfortunately, it seems like we are losing the another speaker, Dimotuma. But I'm sure that he is the dean of the Hawassa University in Ethiopia. And Hawassa University produced the most of government officers in the forestry sector in Ethiopia. And then my team actually used to work together with them in implementing our climate change ODA project in Ethiopia. We discovered that how deep that their knowledge level is when we were working together with them to discuss about the issues and then the sharing some thoughts. And then so I was hoping that we could share further thoughts on what this dean may have today, but I will postpone it to have that chance later on when we have another opportunity comes in. Right. This brings us to the end of today's side event. we started to hear some of the thoughtful, insights by the leaders, not only in Korea, but also in another country and organizations such as the Asia Europe Foundation and the Korea Forestry Service and the UNDP, and then having the opening remarks of the former Minister of Korea Forestry Service. Then we are listening to two keynote speeches. Even if we missed one, we had a good chance to learn about the second presentation by the Susie Kerr. Just for your information, what she talked about was one of the cutting edge, actually, information that you may not get outside, in other places. In other words, so I hope that her presentation helped us to better understand on some of the cutting edge issues in the forest sector these days. Then we had a wonderful panel discussions, starting with Gina from the Asia Europe Foundation. Gina and I have been collaborating on various matters in climate change issues, and then I'm still very thankful to share the stories about urban forestry that Jimin emphasized a lot actually today. And then the Professor Monkvar, she talked about the issues in the dry land countries, including Mongolia, and she emphasized the importance of the working together with developing countries to enhance their capacity. And then Professor Yoon, he shared his thoughts on what should be done. Actually, I think, as I understand, by the academics or experts to address the climate change issues. And then finally, I don't have to summarize what Jimin has just presented on today. So I think we have a lot more to say, but this brings us really the end of today's event. I would like to thank very much for everyone. Now looking at the number who is online now is about 30. I know that we have about 40 people here. So at this time of 8 p.m., so I would say that it was a very successful event, thanks to the participation of all the speakers and audience, and then everyone got being united as one group tonight. And then I hope that this brings us to the next stage of the working together on addressing climate change through the forestry sector. Having said that, thank you very much and good night. And then now I'd like to suggest one thing, that it will be good for everybody to have a photo together. And then if I invite you front, and we don't have much room here, so sit down, and then I will move together with other speakers, and somebody will take a photo from this angle, right? So that we can share the picture maybe later together, if we want to have a picture together, okay? All right, having said that, I give the floor to Buyeon.
Thank you so much. So this is for the WFC side event, Role of Forestry as a Nature-Based Solution to Address Climate Change. So I'd like to say that we are really appreciated, all participants, experts, and renowned scholars. And thank you again.
All right, thank you.